I think, yeah, the best way to answer this is to say that I've been in the business for a certain period of time and, a few decades, and that has, with different experiences, um, at different agencies. And each agency is different. Network agencies are different than boutique agencies, and I've had experience at both. And that helps to shape what kind of a creative person you are, what kind of a writer you are, what kind of a creative director you are. Consumer agencies behave slightly differently than healthcare agencies, and even within healthcare agencies, there are different kinds. Some focus more on consumer healthcare and have a bit of professional healthcare. Others are purely professional healthcare, just to doctors and HCPs and so on and so forth. Um, I've had the good fortune of working at in healthcare for, as you say, quite a while, and even beyond the 16, 17 years most recently, very early in my career, I was exposed to healthcare because I was at an agency that had a healthcare component to it, a sister agency. So I was exposed to it early in my career when I was a writer and associate creative director. And that was really interesting. And that made it more likely that I would go into the healthcare space when I had that opportunity. Now, you know, a bunch of different things help to shape you, including the people you work with, the kinds of um, the kinds of accounts you have, where those accounts are. I've worked on Canadian business and US business and global business within healthcare. And that is really interesting because it lets you know just how big the world is and also how different the methods of communication are and what you can say, what you're allowed to say in those different markets. One market might be more highly regulated than another. For example, you can say less in Canada than you can in the United States, but in Europe, it's different country by country in many cases. So that's interesting because it also in a way can be freeing in terms of the kinds of work that you do and the kinds of ideas that you come to the table with. A lot of people that haven't been in healthcare think that it's less sexy or it's less interesting, and I find it quite the opposite, or less creative, and I find that quite the opposite because there's so much opportunity there. You have restrictions in any number of different types of business that you work in. I've worked on chocolate bars. And it's not as fun as people think. I've worked on cars, and those can be really interesting, but they have rules and regulations. I worked in financial services, and those have obviously lots of rules and regulations. So healthcare is no different. There are rules and regulations; those change by market, but they keep it interesting, and it's always different and fascinating. And I think that is part of what keeps the business interesting for people who have decided to get into the healthcare space. The best way to answer this is to say that I've worked at three networks now. So earlier, before I was in healthcare, I worked at Euro RSCG Havas as a creative director there, and that was a more decentralized model. Okay, so it wasn't high touch in terms of knowing or feeling that you were in a network every day. And then, so at DDB, you were aware of the DDB network and you were kind of aware of obviously what they stood for, and what the ethos was. But they mostly, you would feel their presence through the year, but not every day. I think with Dentsu, the difference is that there's a really clear understanding about what Dentsu stands for, about what healthcare is within Dentsu, and what the overall philosophy of the network is and how it treats its people. It's very clear. It is, you see it every day. You see it in the way that they communicate, and that's nice. It's also different than the other places I've been. Not to say that those weren't good in their own ways, they were. Um, Now, your question was more about, in a way, about how they approach healthcare, and I think um, it is within Dentsu Health is a solution that we get bolted onto and different projects. So we are a solution within the world of Dentsu. We work with Dentsu Creative, we work with Tag, we work with any number of different parts of the Dentsu world. as a healthcare offering in the same way that maybe gaming is as well in different part of practices. Within DDB, it was more different because they had different healthcare brands, standalone healthcare brands like DDB Remedy, Anderson DDB, and and DDB Health, for example. So those networks behave differently in the way that they treat health, and there's no one answer to that. I feel it is, and this has been an ongoing process probably over the last 20 years or so, where healthcare has been recognized more and more as not just being highly creative with lots of creative opportunity, as we call it. But that, the types of shows like Lisbon are creating spaces for healthcare as opposed to it just being kind of a bolt-on category within another show. Those exist, obviously, but Cannes was I judged at Cannes over 20 years ago, and I don't, if memory serves, I don't think there was a specific healthcare category at the time, but now there is, of course. And there are shows that are specifically healthcare focused, and that shows young creative people that there's a way to have a really rewarding career in healthcare because they can get recognition. And let's be honest, awards are recognition and they help build a career and they help build a young person's portfolio and as a way of showing, hey, look, I can do really interesting award-winning work. And for those people who've been in the business longer, it's also important to still be able to strive for something that is not just obviously helping your clients solve the problem they have in front of them, but also being recognized by your peers as creating work that is award worthy. I think this has always been the case that you have to be relevant to the consumer by creating an offering that they need as opposed to some manufactured offering that maybe they don't need. And so it's important to make that emotional connection. And I think any other judge would agree with me on this, that if there's an emotional connection, if someone can look at that piece of communication and say, that speaks to me, I see myself in that, that speaks to me in a way that resonates, then you're more likely to have their attention and change opinion or get them to do something. Um, you know, we in the business want to believe that everyone's waiting for our ad to be read and seen. But of course, that's not true. They're bombarded by communications all day, every day. The consumers and doctors are consumers too. Um, and you have to be able to connect with them on some deeper level in order to get their attention and to get them to listen instead of just clicking or scanning or moving on to the next thing. So that has always been the case. And the technology piece just means that there's more tools available for us to reach those people and reach them in ways that are more resonant with them. So if a doctor is going to a website to look for information, now there's AI-based tools that can serve up that information to the doctor or the healthcare professional based on what their behavior has been or what they've been searching for. So when they go to a website, they see that thing right away as opposed to the top of a page that says, let's get started. So all of those things are wonderful, and they can help to foster a more real connection. Ironically, using AI, form a more real connection with the person you're talking to. Right. So I think I've partly answered this. I wandered into this question a little bit with my last answer. I think that connection is important. I think technology is not the answer, but it is a tool in the toolkit for the people creating the communication. So we have more ways to talk to our target audience, be they a consumer or a doctor or whoever that may be. And so that has always been the case. But now the evolution is so quick, we don't even really know yet. You cannot predict, for example, what the AI tools will be and whether that will make things. The hope is that they make things are allowed to make things more personal or feel more personal and more accurate for those that you're interacting with, without losing that real human component. Because I think people are attuned to that and they're worried about that. So they might be skeptical when they're interacting online and thinking to themselves, am I talking to a real person or am I talking to a chatbot? Or is there two chatbots talking to each other, which is super weird, but has happened. And so that what we have to be aware of, that we don't lose that humanity in our quest to speak on more human terms with our target audiences. Yes, I do. And I think the wonderful thing is that everybody I know that's in the business over the years really likes working on that sort of thing, those sort of causes, because it feeds the soul, right? Beyond the work that we do for our clients that we want to do great work for and we want to improve their businesses, and that's what we're paid to do. It's nice to do stuff that's altruistic. And each agency has a different way in which they do that. They devote some agencies are, we're going to pick one project a year and we're going to collectively agree on what that is and we're going to devote that time. Other agencies pursue a number of different causes every year. It is a great way to, as I said, feed the soul of the person who's in the creative department and the agency. It's not just the creative people; it's all the people involved. And it's also, it makes the agency feel good. It does real good in the world for those causes, even if it's in a small way, right? It's still an improvement. Not everything can be viral, not everything can go global, but that doesn't matter. If you can point to a piece of work you've done where you feel like you've made a difference for that cause, it's a great thing to look back on your career and say, I did that and I made a difference in that area beyond the wonderful work I did for all of my other clients. It would be that I will guarantee you will not have a boring day in the business. And because you will always be working on something that is different, some new product, some new drug that can help people, or a cause, or some other way of communicating on something that matters. Um, could be orthopedics, it could be a cancer drug, it could be any number of different things, but those are endlessly interesting and different. And I know that if you're just coming out of school, you might think, I want to work on beer, or I want to work on cars, or I want to work on telco or whatever. And you should, and you should get some experience in that part of the business. But at some point, you might think, you know what, it might be interesting to work in the healthcare space, and that might be a little more interesting than doing another, coaster ad that's going to go under a beer glass in a bar, which can be fun too, but you might want more. And I would say to them that you can be just as creative in this space as you can in the purely consumer space. And I think that message is getting across to kids coming out of school, because I think they're talking about healthcare advertising in the school programs now for copywriters and art directors. Not every school, but I think a lot of them where they're getting trained. Those programs are getting better, and they are talking about healthcare advertising as an option for people. And that's a wonderful thing. Right. Great question. Fantastic that it's 10 years. It's a wonderful show. I really like the fact that at this show, I see work from all over the world. I see work from Europe that I haven't seen in North America. Something with the North America shows, you see work that's just been in North America. That's great. But I like this show, the breadth of the work that I see, because it's a lot of the stuff when judging is like, well, I haven't even seen that. And so, because some budgets aren't global, some budgets are local, and the work can be wonderful. It is wonderful. So I would say that's really important to remember. I think for people that are entering work, not everyone wins an award, but one thing I've learned over the years in judging shows is that there is a ton of terrific work that may not win. Doesn't mean it's not good. Doesn't mean it hasn't been successful for the client. Doesn't mean you didn't answer the brief. It's just in a show, in a specific show, we're all human and we all like certain things, and something may not get chosen. I really believe that that there's so much good work out there. When you do win an award, you should really be proud because it's had to get through all of that other wonderful work to be noticed. Um, so I'll be looking for stuff that can astonish me and make me think, wow, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd thought of that. That's really what a lot of judges often say is like, holy moly, I didn't that's very cool. I wouldn't have gone there. And look at how they solve that in a really interesting way. And like I talked about earlier, there's that connection. You can go, wow, they really tapped into an insight with this. And it feels like a real insight, not a manufactured insight. Because we can spot those pretty easily. So it's nice when there's something you go, wow, that was terrific. They really got it. And I know this worked. Just by looking at it, you go, wow, wish I'd been the one to come up with that.